Today we're going to be learning scopes. Everything you need to know about scopes is going to be in this video, so it's very important to pay attention because without knowing the scopes, you're not going to be able to do any kind of color grading. I want to say special thank you to Rawfilm for providing this clip, making this tutorial possible. Be sure to check them out. I have a link in the description below with a very nice discount link. It's a fantastic stock footage platform for your next project. Rawfilm, link in the description. Alright, so we're going to be talking about scopes in this video. If you've been following Davinci Resolve Beginner Series, you know actually we slowly progress towards actual color grading. And today, before we jump on painting process, we're going to need to know what is going on the screen. Therefore, we have scopes. Scopes is basically technical representation of the data that you see on the screen. And it's very important for you to know it. If you don't know how to read scopes, you're never going to be able to do proper color grading. Scopes is your eyes. It's very important just as a reference monitor. So you got to really understand how it works. Enough chatter. Let's go to the workspace. Go down and select video scopes, and we're going to turn it on. So we can select multiple scopes. We have 1, 2, 4, and 6. Now, depending how you like to work, you can work with multiple scopes, which I highly recommend. But because this is tutorial, we're going to go one by one. I'm going to explain to you what's going on, and then you decide how many you want to have on your screen. Before we jump on actual scopes, let's click on 3 little dots over here and take a look at the settings of the scopes. First one, we have Waveform Scale Style. Basically, by default, I believe your waveform scaled from 0 to 1023. We can change style to, let's say, 12-bit. We can do percentage from 0 to 100. For example, if we're doing percentage from 0 to 100, by the way, your information doesn't change, just the scale changes. So think of it in a way as an imaginary scale. So 0 means pure black. So if we're going to go to 0, we can see certain areas got crushed. Let me go to the waveform. And all the way up means basically pure white. So that's your 100. Okay, so I'm going to reset everything. And it's up to you depending on the project, what you're doing, what kind of project you have. We have HDR scopes. This is up to you what kind of scopes you're going to set up. So let's just have percentage to make it a little bit easier. Next one, we have Vectorscope style. We're going to come back to it. Very important feature is display qualifier focus. What it means that if we're going to go here and select qualifier, wherever we move on the screen is being reflected with a circle on your waveform or your parade or any other scope. So when you have this on, it's basically visually will tell you whatever you're pointing your mouse, what that information is. Next one, we have low pass filter. So basically low pass filter, just kind of like audio and everything else. It's kind of taking care of, quote, noise in the signal. So if we're going to turn this off, we can see that it's kind of noisy and all over the place. And if we're going to turn low pass filter on, we can see that we have much more precise signal. Again, it's up to you if you want to use this or not. So once you're going to figure out how to use scopes, you can make your decision. Next one, we have ratio 4:3. It's a little square, or 16:9, depending on what kind of monitor you have. And then we have quality. By default, it's going to be set to medium. If you want to switch to high, we can see that the scopes got a little bit more precise. If we're going to switch to low, you can see the quality of the scope is going to be much lower. If you want, you can set it to auto. In my case, I'm going to set it to high because I really want to see what's going on. Now, keep in mind that high settings will use more of your graphics card. So if your GPU is not too powerful, you probably want to crank it down. So basically, that's about it. And let's start with the first one. I want to do waveform. So waveform is basically showing the brightness of your shot. So this is showing your luma value, luminosity value. And we can see wherever we point our little qualifier, it's all within the range. If we're going to increase luma value, we can see the image becomes brighter. If we're going to do the same thing with the shadows, we can see we're giving a little bit more contrast. Therefore, image going in a separate way. So we're stretching the signal. The other way of what I just showed you would be if we simply just start dialing contrast, we can see it's kind of going in the opposite direction of each other. So this is your luma value. And if we're going to click next to waveform, we can do a few little things. We can colorize it, meaning that it's sort of going to represent with a color what we see on the screen. So for example, this is luminosity. So this is kind of like a brightness value. If we're going to point to his shorts, we see it's right over here. The red represented over here, and so on. So it's a very nice way to kind of see what's really going on. Again, how you set it up, it's up to you, whatever comfortable for you. Some people like it like this. If you, I guess, more professional, you can read scopes very well. If you're still learning, this would be a good way for you to see. The extents, basically what it means, it shows you a dirty signal, meaning that it shows you very minute sort of peaks. For example, if we have, let me show you a good example. For example, look at his shoulder. We're going to see that it's going to be within the extent. And if I'm going to point here, we can see that this little thing is extent that we turned on. If you're going to turn it off, it's not that pronounced. We can see that it's still showing it's there, but we cannot see the actual graph. So think of it that it's actually diving deeper into the signal and showing you complete information. If you want to have your extent on, up to you. If you want it off, again, it's up to you, however you like. Then we have waveform brightness. So depending, again, how much you want to see, you can basically just turn it off or dial it up. And then we have this little thing, graticule. It's going to show the lines, the actual lines over here, much more pronounced. Again, how you set it up, it's up to you. So this is the waveform. Next one is parade. Again, if we're going to click 3 over here, we can see RGB parade. We can have YRGB, or we can have YCBCR, which in most of you won't be using. So YRGB. So it's red, green, and blue, and Y standing for luminosity again. So we see all 4. So basically, if you don't want to have just this one, you can have parade, and basically this is your luma value. Okay, let's go into settings again. I just want to have RGB. Same thing. We can colorize it, or we can have black and white, or just white, I guess. And we can have also extents, just like that. We can also make it more visible, however you like it. All right, so what's a parade? A parade show you color. Basically, what's going on with the color. And we can really demonstrate this by going into settings, I guess, and let's say I want to add temperature, making it warm. So the warmer we're going to make this image, the higher the red channel going to go, and the green and the blue going to start going down. So watch this. And we can see how it reflects on the parade. Also, we can play around with the tint. Okay, or we can do opposite way. We can make it cooler, and we can see that we start introducing more blue in our image. So this is how it works. It's very simple. It's a very nice visual representation. And again, once you're going to start moving your mouse, you can see exactly information of each individual channel. So this is very, very cool. All right, so that's the parade. That's kind of very simple and straightforward. So I'm going to reset everything. The next one is Vectorscope. If we're going to click here, we can have low, mid, and high. So low, mid-tones, highlights. We can have colorize it. Let me do all colorize it. We can show extents, and we can have the combine so we can see all information at the same time. Again, we can add more or less depending how we want to see. And basically, what is the Vectorscope? Vectorscope, if information in the middle, it represents least saturated. Okay, and once we start going out, it's gonna start representing increase of saturation. So meaning, let me just start adding saturation without everything. We can see that this little blob gonna start spreading across. So add saturation. I'm gonna do another node, add saturation. Okay, I'm gonna do another node, add saturation. So we have now crazy saturation, and we can see that it's by the edges basically of our scope, of our vector scope. So the more saturated it is, the more out it goes. So I'm going to reset that. The letters over here represents channels. Also, if we're going to go push three little dots here, we can go to the Vectorscope scale style. And instead of standard, we can see simplified. And basically now we have sort of colors representing magenta, blue, cyan, green, yellow, and red. How to demonstrate this? So I'm going to go to the offset, and let's say I'm going to start adding all cyan. And we can see that it's just moving, boom, all the way to cyan. Or we want to do red. We can see that it's all moving to red. You can also, in a way, use this Vectorscope to find a neutral white point. I actually have a video about it, but I'm going to demonstrate with one of my origami LUTs. So if I'm going to select the film LUT over here, okay, for red camera, we can see that by default, it's a little bit warm. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, hold on, is the Vectorscope zoomed in? Yeah, it's 2x zoom. Okay. So we can see that it's a little bit on the warmer side. And we can use the wheel. Watch this. And I'm going to offset it to more neutral. So everything going to start becoming a little bit more neutral right now. So just like that. Okay. And we can see how simply, just by looking at the Vectorscope, we can really nail the image. So let's check it out before and after. And we can see a really huge difference. Now, if I'm going to do a new node, okay, again, we're going to cover that in the future. And let's say I want to change the color of his pants. Okay, and we can see that it's cyan right over here. It's kind of like teal little color. So what I can do, I can use qualifier to qualify his pants. Okay, so something like that. Let's do clean white. Okay, so that's fine for this particular tutorial. And I'm just gonna start moving hue, and we can see how hue value of what we selected moves on our Vectorscope. So it's very cool, and you can dial a lot of interesting sort of colors. I want to make sure that, there we go. And next thing you know, we change the color of his pants. So I think that looks cool. We can make it least saturated. We can make more saturated. We can see how it's going outwards. And that's basically your Vectorscope. Very useful, very cool feature. Okay, so I'm gonna delete that. Next one is histogram. I'm not gonna cover histogram too much. Basically, histogram is just like RGB parade. We can have YRGB histogram, basically same exactly like RGB parade, just more horizontal. 0 represents black, 100 represents white, and if we're going to play around, we can see how this thing basically works. Okay, very simple. Next one we have CIE. So what the hell is this thing? Well, by default, and I'm probably going to make a video debunking stupid comments I've been getting about color management. By default, Davinci Resolve will always have timeline color space in Rec 709. And as I mentioned this in numerous videos that I've made, by default, you don't need to change anything as Rec 709 is right now a standard. So don't even worry about changing anything here. So what this thing represents? It represents your current color space. So it represents timeline color space that you're currently working. If I'm going to change this to a different one, for example, add P3 and click Save, we can see that it changed depending on what color space you're working. Again, by default, it's set to Rec 709. So we can see Rec 709. And that's our color space. Now, this little color blob is basically all our information within given color space. So if we want to be precise and we're working for a client that, legit, it's not something that's going to go to YouTube or Vimeo, we're talking about like a real quality. We want to make sure that we're not violating walls, the border of our given color space. For example, we can see here that I'm very nicely within the space. But if I'm going to do a new node, and let's say I'm going to move it, I don't know, like somewhere, let's see, somewhere over here, we can see that the big chunk of the signal disappeared. Well, we actually went outside of our border. So if we'd be submitting this to a TV or broadcast, this is no good. So we would have to return this to our proper values. We can see that the saturation went way too crazy. Now, if I'm going to reset this, we can see that I can decrease it with the saturation, or I can increase it. Again, I made few videos explaining all this in more details, but this is all you need to know. Now, if we're going to click on the slider here, we can add additional gamut. So we can add additional, basically, color border that we can see what's going on. So, for example, let's say that my client wants me to color grade for Rec 709, and he also wants me to color grade for, I don't know, P3. Okay, so I'm going to do P3 D65 or P3 DCI. Okay, just like that. And now I can see that P3 is right over here. So if I'm going to start moving this thing, we can see basically sort of visually again what's going on. This is our Rec 709 triangle, and this is our P3 triangle. You don't have to set those things. The more professional you go, you're going to figure out everything on your own. For now, that's kind of all you really need to know, so you understand the entire process. Now, once you click 2 or 4, you can set up all your windows basically simultaneously. Therefore, you can really start working and dialing scopes and information however you want. So basically, hopefully this explains everything. If you have questions, shoot the comment below. Do not send me your questions to my email. I don't understand why some of you think that instead of making comment on YouTube, it's better to send me directly. I will not be answering any questions that are being sent directly. The only direct messages are business inquiries But for now, if you have questions, leave it in the comments, not direct messages. So next videos, we're going to start working with the color grading, and there's going to be more cool stuff in the future. So thank you for watching. Again, be sure to subscribe, check out my Instagram and all the links below. And I'm going to see you in the next video. Take care.